All right, and I believe we are recording. Yeah, I'm gonna hide this menu. So this is our review for the second half of the material in Math 1025. Brain's not working today. And this is from the end of chapter 2 and chapter 3. So hopefully everything looks familiar, and we're gonna work through this. You can ask any questions you have, and we'll go from there. So question number 1 talks about our change of error, relative change. It says the number of participants collecting food stamps went from 15 million to 11 million. Calculate the actual change. So did it increase or decrease? And you can still see my screen, right?
Decrease.
It decreased, yeah. How much did it decrease? It says to be negative. How much did it decrease by? From 15 million to 11 million, decreased by 4 million. That's the actual change. That's exactly how much it went down by. What we want to do is see how important or how impactful that change was, and that's where the relative change comes in. So we're going to take the negative 4 million and we're going to divide it by, actually the answer key up here too. Let's see. Why is it not clicking? I think when it records, it slows down a little bit. So we took the 11 minus the 15, that's how we got the 4 million, and then we divide it by what the original amount was. So we're going to go back and divide it by the 15 million. And then they want that as nearest 1/10 of a percent, so I'm going to get out my calculator. Apparently I have 2 of them up right now. And I'm going to turn it on. And I'm going to take negative 4 million divided by 5 million. I can get rid of the millions because you can cancel out zeros when you're simplifying. That is as a decimal. We're going to multiply that by 100 to get it as a percent. And I just typed that in wrong. Negative 4 million divided by 15. I knew 80% seemed way too high. Negative 4 divided by 15. And now we're going to multiply by 100 so we can get it as a percent. And they asked me to round to the nearest 1/10 of a percent. So it's going to be negative 26.7%. Questions? So a fairly impactful change. It says describe the impact this change might have on amounts of funds going forward. Let's go ahead and look at the answer key because you watching me write that out would not be fun. Something along the lines of, since fewer people are using it, it is likely the funding will be cut. And it'll probably be cut by that change. So this was one of the first things we did after the midterm. Questions on question number 1. All right, let's look at number 2. Number 2 is that expected value. We did that right after the midterm as well. And it should be similar to this where they give you an outcome and they give you a probability. So we're not calculating the probabilities here. And all we have to do to get the last column is multiply the first times the second. And you can do it in a calculator, or if you like, you can keep it as weird looking fractions to start with. So 3 times 1/6, we could just write as 3/6. Negative 2 times 2/6 would be negative 4/6. And again, you can use your calculator if you want to on that. 2 times 3/6 is 6/6. And then with expected value, make sure you do the second part, which is add up all of those numbers. So 6 plus 3 is 9. 9 minus 4 is 5, so it's 5/6. And then at that point, I might want to get a decimal because we're talking about money. Let's get my calculator out and do 5 divided by 6. And they asked me to round to 2 decimal places. I'm expected to win about 83 cents. So 0.83. Questions on that one? This was when we talked about normal distribution and standard deviation. They're going to give you the normal curve like this with the percents already written in, and then they're going to give you the mean. So they're going to tell you what the mean is here. Elliot doesn't like highlighters on here. There we go. And that will go right in your middle. That number goes right in the middle of the normal curve. And then they're also going to give you the standard deviation. So they give us that here, and that's what we add to go to the right and subtract to go to the left. So what number goes right in the middle there where I have the U highlighted or the mu highlighted?
105.
Beautiful. And then to go to the right, we just add the standard deviation. So 105 plus 15 is 120. Add it again. 120 plus 15 is 135. Yeah, that doesn't look like a 3. Let's fix that. And add 15 one more time. Get 150. Questions on where those numbers are coming from? Let's go to the left. So to go to the left, we subtract. What's 105 minus 15?
95.
Beautiful. 90, I believe. Try to double check that on me. So make sure you do 105 minus 15.
Yeah, 90.
And then I do that too. And then subtract 15 again. I think we get 75. Definitely those of you with calculators out, be checking me on this. I get in trouble when I do things in my head. And then subtract 15 one more time, we'll get 60. So that's going to be a lot of the points there, just getting that filled in. Questions on how we filled that in? Part B is going to ask us to find a probability based on the empirical rule. The empirical rule are those percents that are written in there. So it's, first we want a probability or an expression. I guess I want the answer too. So it says, write an expression that describes the probability of a randomly selected IQ test to be less than 75. So we want the probability that the test or the IQ is less than 75. And then what I do is I find 75 on my curve, my normal graph. If 75 is not one of the numbers I wrote up there, I've done something wrong in writing those numbers down. Whatever number they give me for this problem has to be one of the numbers on the lines. And you'll see it's right here. There's 75. And to find the probability that an IQ is less than that, I'm going to add the numbers to the left. So I'm going to take 2.35. The calculator does not want to do the touch thing. 2.35 plus 0.15. I love that those are written in for you because they often are not. And we got a probability of 2.5%. Questions? This should be very similar to the actual test, just like it was for the midterm. All right, so writing the formula for the slope. And I think on the answer key, I'll go back to that because I think I wrote it several ways. So it's, whoops. It's helpful to see all the different ways we wrote it. Yeah. So those are all different ways. The formula is truly what they're looking for in the pink there. But we think of slope in many different ways. We think of it as rise over run, change in y over change in x, delta y over delta x. But the slope is, the formula is actually the y2 minus y1 equals x2 minus x1. And then another question about slope is, what does the rate of change represent? It represents how quickly something changes over time. And then they should be asking me one where I have to calculate something. Yeah. Are there any questions on 5 or 6? Again, we've got the answer key here just because the writing is much neater on that. That is my writing, but I wrote on paper, so it's a little bit neater. All right. And if we go past something, we can always go back. Let me know if you have questions. So this one kind of puts a lot of this stuff together. It's going to talk about slope, y-intercept. So the first thing they're asking me is for the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is wherever we cross the y-axis. And what is that ordered pair? What number did I circle there?
10.
Yeah, beautiful. So that is the y-intercept. it says that I'm looking at a movie download service that has a monthly fee for membership, and then it costs a fixed amount to rent movies each week. Okay, that makes sense to me. The bottom of the graph is the number of movies. The vertical is the total monthly cost. So now that we found this 0, 10, I love that we do this now because I want to know what that means in terms of this problem. Any guesses? Does it mean the monthly fee, or does it mean the amount to run each video?
The monthly fee.
Yeah, it's the monthly fee. So they're going to charge me $10 per month. Now they want us to find the slope. To do the slope, I can use any 2 points on the line. I can do any of the pairs. I can do the first and the last. I can do some in the middle. I can do anything. They will always give you the same number. I'm just going to go ahead and use 217 and 838. I just picked it randomly. It's the first one I saw when I lifted up my head. So now we're going to use that slope formula that we wrote and find the slope. We talked about this as we subtract the y value. So the first thing you're going to do is 38 minus 17. And what's that give you? I'm always afraid of doing stuff in my head. I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up. I think it's 21. Can you confirm that? I think we're right. If I do something wrong, yeah, type in. I do have the chat still up, so I can still see that. All right. Then in the same order, subtract the x value. So 38 went first, so 8 goes first, minus the other x value. What is 8 minus 2? I think we get 6. And then your last step is to divide it out. I'm going to take 21 divided by 6 in my calculator, and I get 3.5. I'm going to do it as 3.5 because we're talking in terms of money in this one. In most algebra courses, you would leave that as the reduced fraction, which would be 7 over 2. But it makes so much more sense here. What is that slope now? We know it's some dollar amount. What are they charging me $3.50 for? If $10 was the monthly fee, what is this $3.50? It's the cost per what?
Per movie.
Per movie, yeah, or per download. Perfect. Perfect. And that's one of the things I said I love about this class. I love that we put meaning to the numbers now. So if we were doing this problem and we got some slope of -5, all of a sudden we're going to go, no, that's not right. I've done something wrong because they're not going to pay me to rent movies. Not usually. And then the last thing on this one is to put it in slope-intercept form. So that is one form you have to know, y equals mx plus b. It might be helpful to do a couple of these formulas on cardstock, like little index cards, make little flashcards. For this one, the point slope, the direct variations, there's some value in doing that. This one, we're going to replace m with the slope we just found. It doesn't matter if we use 350 or 3.5. And then we're going to replace the b with the number we found up here. It does not like me to highlight right away when I first do it. So I'm going to have y equals, what number am I putting in for the slope?
3.5.
Yep, perfect. And you can either write 3.5. I don't want to do that in red though. You can either write 3.5 or 3.50. I like the pretty colors. X plus, and then what number am I replacing b with?
10.
And if you wrote it in the other order, that would be fine as well. If you wrote 10 plus 3.5x. What you can't do is put the 10 with the x. You can't do 10x plus 3.5. That would not work. But you could do 10 plus 350x. Questions on this one? All right, so the 8 is kind of back a step because it's the section before where we did direct variation. That was the y equals kx or y equals mx. It was kind of the first, oops, not km. It was the first of the equations we talked about when we did equations of lines. Just a hair easier than the one we just did. The conversion rate of US dollars to Chinese yuan varies directly. They gave me an equation, so that's cool. What does it mean to vary directly? So again, so you don't have to watch me write, because I know that's painful. We'll look at what it says here. There we go. It just wasn't coming in. So, to vary directly, it means that the relationship between the two variables is one in which one variable is a constant multiplier of another. We talked about this as being a straight line through the origin. Back when we did that section, we said it had to go through 0, 0, and it had to be a straight line, either up or down. So, that's a simple explanation, but it works. And then the constant of variation we can see because it is given to us. It's the number with the variable. I can't get my highlighter to work. Sometimes it's difficult. So the constant of variation in this case is 5.3. And then they want us to use the same equation to figure out how much $8,000 would be converted into Chinese, I don't know how to pronounce that, yuan? I'd say yuan probably. So we're going to take y equals 5.3 times 8,000. Do it in your calculator. It's definitely not one I try to do in my head. I do a lot in my head, but I'm not going to try to do that one in my head. Turn it on. 5.3 times 8,000. And the answer is 42,400. Any questions? All right, so 9 has us actually doing some graphing. Cool. 9 says a rideshare service offers fares with a $4 initial fee and then an additional $2 per mile charge. Write an equation in slope-intercept form. So basically, the hardest part about this one is figuring out what the M is and what the B is. And the M is usually the easier one to identify because it's the word with the word per. They're charging me $2 per mile here. So this $2 does not like my highlighter today. Is going to go in place of M, which then only leaves me with the other number, my initial fee, which fits our definition of, does not want to highlight, fits our definition of what B is. Questions on why I chose the numbers I did? I haven't plugged them in yet. So y equals my slope, which is $2 per mile, x, plus my y-intercept, which is 4. Question, so that's your equation. All right, they want us to graph it. I'm going to go ahead and look at what we did for the... All right, so we went up by 2s on both. Okay, we can do that again. So when I did this before, when I wrote out the answers, we went up by 2s across this axis. So 2, 4, 6, 8. I can't write that small. And we're talking about miles across the bottom. Got to have our labels in. And cost along the side. And we also went up by 2s there as well. 2, 4, 6, 8. To graph it, there's a couple different ways you can graph it. The way we were taught in the book was to graph the y-intercept. So let's graph the 0, 4. That's on the y-axis. So that's going to be right here. I don't do dots very well either. And then they did teach us that we can use the slope to count up and over. So I'd go up 2 over 1, which would be a half on here. If you don't like that for the second point, we can find another point completely different. I can say, all right, if I'm going 5 miles, let's not do 5. I'm going up by even numbers. Let's do something better than 5. Let's do 6 miles. You would plug it into the equation. 2 times 6 plus 4. 12 plus 4 is 16. So 6 miles is going to be 16. 6, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. That may be a little bit easier. And then connect them with a line. So you can do the slope and y-intercept, or you can just find 2 points. Once you've found 2 points, you can connect them. I have never seen a rideshare service this cheap. Questions on this one? That's number 9.
It can just be any point.
Yep, as long as it's not too far off your graph. So like, I wouldn't want to do 100 miles here because my bottom doesn't go that far. My bottom only went 6, 8, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. I wouldn't go any further than 20.
Okay.
And I should finish writing that number in there. We said that was 16. Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to do it because we've gotten pretty good at that. It's basically creating a table but only doing 2 points. Other questions on 9? All right, here's the fun one. Point slope. I know this is the hardest formula we do, but we'll get through it. So the formula we learned in the textbook was y minus y sub 0 equals m times x minus x sub 0. It's an ugly looking formula. You may have learned it somewhere in a previous life with x1 and y1. I've seen it both ways. M is still the slope, so we're going to replace m with whatever the slope of the line is. Oh, look, they gave it to me in that one. That's cool. I can highlight that right there. Maybe I can. It doesn't have to highlight the type code. You can do it with my mouse, though. All right, so we got that one. And then we're going to replace x sub 0 with the x value of the point they gave me. Again, the typing. It doesn't like the typing. And then we're going to replace y sub 0 with the y value of the point they gave me. That's all those symbols represent. They are going to be replaced with numbers. Questions so far? So the part A is a little bit easier than part B, but I'm going to show you in part B how we can do it in the calculator. Part A we couldn't do in the calculator. The one that used to be on the old test was very similar to A because it's technically a little easier. So y minus, what is the bright green part I've highlighted? What number should go in that place?
-6.
-6, and I'm so glad you said -6 because those double negatives are about the hardest part about this. And what do I replace m with? It's a little dark, maybe hard to read.
It's a 6, right?
Yes, 6.
Okay.
Perfect. I like the red highlighter, but it's a little dark. And what do I replace the x sub 0 with? That's the yellow one.
A 5.
Beautiful. So once you get to this point, take a deep breath, congratulate yourself, you're halfway there. We don't generally leave it in this form because this is just not a pretty form for an equation. And there'll be more room on the test to do this, I promise. So a couple of things we're going to do. We're going to get this into y equals form. So I'm going to have to distribute on this side and then take care of the double negatives here. And I'm going to try to squeeze this in because we have no room. So y plus 6 equals 6x minus 30. Such as it is. Then there's one more step, subtract the 6 from both sides. So you get y equals 6x minus 36. Just be careful when you do that part in your calculator. Make sure you do -30 minus 6. That is the most common mistake I've seen on these. My calculator turned off. So -30 minus 6. So make sure you get -36 for that. Questions on that one? I'm going to get the highlighter out and start highlighting for the second one. I cannot highlight the slope yet though, but I can go ahead and highlight the x and y of one of the points. I'm going to use the second point because I hate using negatives in here. So when I go to use my formula, same formula, my x sub 0 is going to be replaced with 1. You could use either point, and that would be a great check if you have time on the test. Do it with the point that you want to do it with first, and then do it with the other point. You should get the same answers. All right, we do not have the slope, so we need to find the slope. But we know how to find the slope. And I'm going to come down here below because this other one shouldn't take as much. I'm going to subtract the y value, so 4 minus -6. Double negative becomes plus, that's 10. Do you agree with that? and then find the slope. So in the same order, I did 4 first. I have to do 1 first, 1 minus 0. That's a nice slope. So the slope is 10. Now I have something I can highlight with my red highlighter. So what happens in this problem is I have an abundance of points. I have more points than I need. But now that I've highlighted everything, I can go fill it in. So y minus, and I chose to do the 4 for my y value. Again, it will work with either. And then I'm replacing slope with 10. And then x minus whatever I have in yellow there, which is the 1. Questions so far? Because the only other thing we have left is to solve it for y. So the solving step is always very much the same. And the only thing you have to watch out for is double negatives. It doesn't happen here. We're going to multiply through, so I get 10x minus 10. And the last step is to add 4. So I get y equals 10x minus 6. That one you could actually do in the calculator the same way we're going to do number 11. So 11 is the one where you absolutely have to have the calculator for it because it's the linear regression. But I want to show you what happens when we do something like problem number 10b in here. So we're still going to type it in. We're going to go to stat. I'm going to edit, and these directions are on the back of the test. If you happen to have anything typed in there, arrow up, clear, enter. When they reset your calculator in the testing center, it will clear out the list. That's the one benefit. It will also make your R go away, but we'll talk about how to get R back in a second. Oh, shoot, I want R back. I'll show you how to get R back with this one in a second. So we typed the two X values in as the first list. So the first one was 0, and the second X value was 1. So it's not as many as we usually do, not as many as we'll have in number 11. And then I typed the Y values in. So with the 0, we had a negative 6. And with the 1, we had a 4. It's not a very big list, but it'll still work. Go to stat, arrow over, and go down to number 4. That's all we're doing in this is number 4 stuff. So go down to number 4 and hit enter, 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 until it starts giving you A and B. There's your slope, there's your y-intercept. That's exactly what we found. Y equals 10x minus 6. Now, when we're doing number 11, we're going to want the R to show up, the correlation coefficient. And when they erase your calculator's memory at the testing center, it will be gone. The back of the test also shows you how to bring R back, but you're going to hit second 0. You want to get into the catalog of your calculator. This is the list of everything your calculator can do, which I think is kind of cool. Explains why it's so expensive. You're going to scroll down to the D's, and we're going to go to diagnostic on. So put the little arrow next to diagnostic on. Hit enter, and it says done. We don't know what it did, but it did something. And then I'm going to go back to stat. I'm going to calculate again. I'm going to go to linear regression. And this time I'll get more than A and B. I'll get R and R squared. And this is what I think is really cool. And I only discovered this a couple years ago. I probably should have known it somewhere along the way. But R is 1. We talked in problems like number 11, line of best fit, where if R is close to 1 or negative 1, if it's close to 1 or negative 1, it's a good fit. So an R of 1 means it's a perfect fit, which it's going to be with 2 points. You don't have to do it that way, but I think it's kind of cool. Questions on 10. 11 uses the calculator, so we'll just keep it up. Go to stat. We're going to edit the list because I want to get something new in my list. I'm going to hit clear, enter to clear out the lists. Any questions on getting to this part of the calculator? I'm guessing if you did the free 8 homework, you've got a lot of practice with it. All right, so now we're going to start typing in. Study time goes in the first list. So 18, enter. 25, enter. 9, enter. 13, enter. 14, enter. 21, enter. We have 6 items. Make sure all your numbers are correct. If you make any mistakes, it will cause all kinds of problems. Scores, 85 for the first one. 96 for the second one. 60. Oops, then that's a 0. So that's what I have to check. 60. 77. And again, when I'm doing, if I was doing this on a test, I would check it many, many times, make sure my lists are correct. Good check to recognize they're correct is they end at the same place. So that's helpful. If they're staggered, one of the lists is wrong, erase them both, start over. Questions on entering the list? All right, stat button again. Arrow over to calculate. Go down to number 4, hit enter. Then again, hit enter a bunch of times until it gives us A, B, and R. And A is the slope, B is the y-intercept, and R is that correlation coefficient we're so interested in. So my A is my slope, so that tells me 3 decimal places here. So y equals 2.029, but the 5 bumps it up, so y equals 0.030x. There's a decimal there, it's hard to see. Plus my y-intercept, which is 49.508. And now we've got an equation. Let's make sure that matches our answer key. I'm sure it does. It just, the R seems a little low to me. Nope. We're good. All right. I'm used to having higher R's. So that's the equation. That's probably a third of the points you're going to get on this. Now I want you to explain the meeting. And we'll go back to that and describe what that means. The slope. I wrote something down wrong there. I did write that down wrong. I'm glad I checked. This is the downside using calculator for stuff. 2.030, so focus on the rounding there. And the way we wrote it in the answer key describes what that slope means. It says that your final exam score increases by 2.030 points for every hour extra that you studied. Again, I love the fact they're asking us for meaning of this stuff. And then the correlation coefficient was the R on my calculator, which is 0.889 if we round it to 3 decimal places. And is it a good fit? The answer is yeah, it's pretty good. I'd like to see a not 0.9, but it's still a pretty good fit. It's not close to 0. The data is roughly aligned then is what that means. And then I love that we put D in here because we're going to take that equation and use it. We have a student who studied for 15 hours. We're going to replace X with 15 and see how our student did. So we're going to take, their score will be 2.030 times 15 plus 49.508. Got my calculator. It's not letting my touchscreen work for the bottoms. It just bugs me. So I'm going to type this in, 2.030 times 15. You can either use the times sign, times button, or use the parentheses, plus 49.508. So our student's probably going to get about an 80. Round to the nearest whole number, yeah. So we're looking at an 80 here for our student. Questions? So that's the one where you need the graphing calculator.
Which one? Okay, so A is slope, B is...
A is slope and B is y-intercept, and then R is the correlation coefficient.
Okay.
I'll bring that back real quick. I've said for years, I wish that they would do M. It's been A for 30 some years. I think I got my first calculator in 92. And it's always been A. And like, it'd be so easy for them to put M because we all learned it as M. But on the TI, the A is the slope. B is the intercept, and then R is and your R will disappear because they're gonna clear the memory of your calculator in the testing center. And on the back of the test, we'll come back to those in a minute. They give you the directions. So they give you the directions on how to do the line of best fit, find the A and B, and then if your R is not showing up, this is that part right here, how to turn it back on. So it is there. Other questions so far? And that's the one where you need the graphing calculator. All right, the last one is from the last section we did. We're talking about deductive and inductive reasoning. So 12A says the last several network dramas I followed have been canceled just when I started getting into them. So I'm not going to bother watching the new one they're advertising, even though it looks good, because I don't want to be disappointed when it gets canceled. So they're asking us if that's inductive or deductive reasoning. Again, this one has a lot of writing, so I'm going to pull up what we have here. It's actually inductive. The decision to not watch is based on past trends, what happened to the last ones I watched. In order to be a nurse, you need at least a 2-year degree. When I was in the emergency room after my accident, I asked the nurse where she went to college. That is deductive reasoning because we know that all nurses have to go to college to get a degree, so we asked a specific nurse where she went. We assumed she went. So inductive is smaller to bigger, deductive is bigger to smaller. General to more specific. And then we can use that, I want to do that one there. We'll do this one. We can use that to find some patterns. So we're going to look for patterns. I went from 95 to 90 to 85 to 80 to 75. What's happening to each number?
Decreasing by 5.
Decreasing by 5. So what do you think the next number will be?
70.
70. And then I'm having trouble going back and forth. Yeah, so and then your conjecture can just be that the next number will be the previous number minus 5. So we just kind of dipped our toes into inductive and deductive reasoning. We did not do a lot with it. Questions? I think that's the last problem. Yep, last problem. Let me stop the recording and then I'll answer any other questions you may have.